Hello and welcome to Fats on Film. I am your host, Hannah Ogilvie, and this is the podcast where we discuss all things fat representation in film, TV, and wider media. Today, I am joined by freelance film critic who specialises in horror, writing bylines at the Hollywood News, Ghouls Magazine, Film Stories, Filmhounds, and more. It's Kat Hughes. Hello, Kat.
Hi, Hannah. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I am very pleased that the temperature has suddenly dropped. It's nice to be able to breathe in the house again.
Oh, I know. I have the window still in the crack, just like get the air flow in,
Yes.
but it is a lot softer. And I was just saying to Kat before we hit record, I am actually wearing a roll neck today, which just shows you in July I should not be wearing this, should be in my winter wardrobe, but here we are. I just want to point out, Kat, straight away, what are our little friends behind you?
So, considering what we're talking about, I have got some Funko Pops that represent a key character that we're going to be discussing. So, I've got mini Dennis Nedrys and mini Dilophosaurs.
Oh my God, I didn't even know they. I mean, of course they exist because it's Funko Pop and they do
Yeah.
like a character, a little thing for everything. But I just love it. I just caught them there, and I was like, oh, they look so cute. So yeah. Well, I mean, we've actually gone in straight into it. So we're here to talk about Jurassic Park, 1993's Jurassic Park. So, Jurassic Park is a 1993 sci-fi film directed by Steven Spielberg. I hope I don't need to introduce Steven Spielberg to our listeners. Based on the Michael Crichton book of the same name, and he did the screenplay with David Coep, and he's like an incredibly prolific screenwriter. So he did Spider-Man, 2002's Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, War of the Worlds for 2005, and the most recent Indiana Jones. And then Michael Crichton, like again, very notable novelist. And also when I was just Googling him to see what else had he done, he created ER. I had no idea. Then the film stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Richard Attenborough. The film made over $1 billion at the box office, won all 3 Academy Awards for which it was nominated, which included Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. And in 2018, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as, and I quote, culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And currently it is ranked as 144 in IMDb's top 250 films. Kat, please let me listeners know, what is Jurassic Park all about?
So, Jurassic Park, a paleontologist, paleobotanist, mathematician, lawyer, and 2 children get invited to spend the weekend on a billionaire's island on which is resurrected the long extinct dinosaur. But awe quickly turns to fear when the power goes out and the prehistoric creatures once more roam the earth freely.
Yes. Oh my God. It's an epic film. I love this film so much. My first question straight away, what is your relationship to Jurassic Park?
I mean, I've been obsessed with Jurassic Park for years. So I think I was about 6 or 7 when it came out in the cinemas. And prior to that, I read the Michael Crichton novel. Yes, I read the adult novelization at age 6 or 7. I was an only child. I did a lot of reading. I was a free reader early, and we were in the supermarket in Safeway. I remember that supermarket chain.
Wow, yes.
Yeah. And I saw it, and it was side by side with the kids one. And my mum was like, "Do you not want this one with pictures?" And I was like, "No, because like, you know me, I can read." So I sat and read the Michael Crichton novel just before the film came out. So I was expecting a film that was going to be a lot more intense because the novel is a lot more grown up.
Yes.
But I still remember sitting in the cinema. There was a woman, she was maybe like in her 50s, sat next to me during the T-Rex attack, and she was like fully chewing her fingers, like covering her eyes. And I was just like, what's wrong with you, crazy lady? This is fucking amazing. There's a dinosaur about to eat some people.
Yes.
So yeah, and it's just, I had the souvenir magazine that came out, which had a map on the last page of Jurassic Park. So for an only child with an active imagination, it gave endless like ideas for play, where I'd be like on Jurassic Park and I'd have to like use the map to get around and stuff. So yeah, this film is like a massive part of my childhood.
I love like how deep into the lore young Kat was, you know.
Yes.
And again, it's such a credit to this film, like the marketing, the fact that, you know, they did, you know, these little souvenir books and, you know, the documentaries that came out of it, the making of. Obviously, famously, there's a shot where you see all the merchandise in Jurassic Park, and that was merchandise they actually did for the film. Like, oh, it's just so smart. But yeah, very similar. I would have been way too young to have seen this in the cinema, but I don't remember the first time I saw it. But I remember maybe the second, third, fourth time, and the scene where T-Rex is chasing Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum in the Jeep, must go faster. I was under my dining room chair, terrified. And I know I'd seen it before, but there was something, I don't know, just a slightly older. I understood like the actual peril of this scene a bit more than I previously did. Terrified me. Obviously, the Velociraptor scene in the kitchen is one of the most iconic scenes ever. You know, watched this film last night to refresh for this podcast, and I had to keep pausing and just being like, this is just genius. It's just genius. This film is one of my most favorite films ever made. When I hate the question, what's your most favorite film? Because, you know, depending on what kind of mood I'm in, we'll give you a different answer. But Jurassic Park will always be in that top 4. Will always be. What's your relationship with the sequels? I mean, the direct sequels and then the kind of revamp we've had recently.
My relationship with the sequels, again, for Lost World, I read the Michael Crichton novel.
Yes, okay.
Like around the same time as I saw the film, I think.
Yeah.
I don't mind too.
No.
I think it took some massive swings, and I liked what the messages that it was trying to get across about animal conservation and cruelty. And there's like Vince Vaughn's character who is there to sort of liberate the animals and stuff. I thought it was a really interesting topic to shine a light on. And then also the whole thing with zoos and things, with the T-Rexes being taken to go into a zoo and how animals are treated there. The third film is just, no, it's not for me. My husband is an ardent defender of 3, and it just ends. It like gets halfway through a scene, and then they're just at the beach, and
then at the beach.
Yeah, and there's the phone. I mean, I don't have a ringtone, and I think in part it's because of that film, because that ringtone just goes on so much. And then I like bits of the sort of recalls or whatever you want to call them that have come around recently, the Jurassic World series, but they'll never be Jurassic Park. It was one of those films that was lightning in a bottle, and no matter how much they try, it's never going to be the same. And the fact that as the series has gone on with the Jurassic World ones, they're all CG dinosaurs, it doesn't feel the same. The fact that we're talking about Jurassic Park, which came out early 90s, and you can watch it and the effects are still pretty much seamless to this day. And that's because it's a marriage of early CGI and practical effects. It makes it feel real.
Yes.
6-7-year-old me, I genuinely believed that we were bringing dinosaurs back in a couple of years. There was all this talk about how technically viable it might be to get DNA from an embryo. So I was fully putting like pet velociraptors on my Christmas list and birthday list for years, but they never came.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely remember those headlines of like, how actually technically viable is bringing back dinosaurs. And it's interesting because it's like, did you not watch the film? Did you not hear the cautionary tale it's trying to put across? But people see money, and capitalism is a hellscape. So, Kat, when we first talking about you coming on the podcast, you suggested Jurassic Park before you even saw the kind of list I give to my guests. So obviously I hear it is because it's clearly one of your favorite films, you love it. But when I asked the question about fat representation, what film do you want to talk about, why did Jurassic Park be the first one for you?
I think probably because it was one of those films that I watched early age that had a fat character for one, and just the portrayal of him in it. He is sort of the bad man and he's
Yeah.
also one of the only fat characters in the film. And I thought it'd be interesting to sort of look at what that says, because everyone's talked to death about Jurassic Park, but I don't think anybody's analysed the character of Nedry too much.
Yeah, I agree. When I have spoken about fat representation in sci-fi is really, really big for having their villains be larger characters. So you could look at like Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars, for example. And I think it's interesting because I think people forget that Jurassic Park is a sci-fi film, because it, like, when we think of sci-fi, we think futuristic, we think in space, and I was like, no, this is also futuristic because dinosaurs don't exist currently, and I'd like it to keep it that way. And so Nedry's like a really good example of this fat villain. And I quickly, because I did read the book many years ago, and you mentioned it's so much more grown up and dark and violent in the book than it is in the film. And that was obviously a very conscious choice for Spielberg, because he wanted to make sure that children could see this film as well. I appreciate it. It would have been interesting to see like an R-rated version of this film, though. So I quickly Googled like what was Nedry's description in the book, and I do have it somewhere. Yes, so he is described as an obese, messy, and increasingly obnoxious computer scientist. So, you know, from that point of view, yep, it was written in the book. They've translated that into the film. It's a key part of this character is that he is a bigger man. And some of the tropes we get with fat villainy is their body is a representation of their motives and personality. So when we first meet Dennis Nedry, and I should say played by Wayne Knight, we meet him on a beach. He is eating. It's interesting that it's our first introduction to Nedry. He is eating plates of food on his table, right? And, you know, he sees Dodgson, come over here, and hails him over, like, just very crass, like, not very subtle, very bold. And obviously Dodgson says, you know, you shouldn't say my name. It's not subtle because, you know, it's there. It's very much there. With this scene really does set us up for who Nedry is and where his allegiances lie. And we find Dodgson, who is working for a competitive company to InGen, but is obviously behind in terms of technology and research, is paying Nedry $1.5 million, which is just over $3 million in 2023 money, to steal dinosaur embryos, so then they can like catch up on 10 years of research, is what Nedry says. And he's very excited to see the big bag of money. Very excited. The laugh he does is almost very similar to a dinosaur laugh. I don't know if you catch that. It's just a really high-pitched squeak. And then the check comes, and he says, "Don't get cheap on me, Dodgson." When, like, I appreciate you were watching this film for the first time with this lens on. Like, how do you feel? What do you think the film is trying to get the audience to believe about Nedry, just with these, like, 2-3 minute scene that we see of him?
Well, he's, for one, as in addition to being bigger, he's that not obnoxious American. You know, they're not in America, they're on holiday somewhere, so he's that obnoxious American tourist. He's there in a loud, sort of garish shirt. He's not hiding himself. You know, he's not a bigger character that is trying to hide his stature. He's, you know, quite sort of out and proud. But it is, I think, and especially at the time it was released, where fat phobia was just so inherent in everything that it wasn't even seen as fat phobic. It was just, this is how it is. This person, oh, look at this, oh, look at all those plates, how greedy is this person? So it's instantly saying, look, he's greedy, look, he's eating all this food, he doesn't need to eat a lot of food, he doesn't need all this money. You know, we don't know anything about Nedry's circumstances. We don't know what his personal life is. We don't know if he needs the money for something. You know, he might have, you know, a big debt he's trying to pay off, or a family to support. We don't find that out of him. All we see is, look how greedy he's eating all this, so of course he's going to want all this money. And look, he's not even happy with having like $1 million. He wants this man to pay for all this food. You know, he's eating all this food, he's not even going to pay for it. So it hammers quite early on that Nedry is driven by greed, and also that he's quite careless and clumsy.
Yes.
He's not doing the the sort of like super spy secret meeting. He's not following the rules. He's quite willing to just, he's self-serving. Like, he doesn't care about Dodson. He just wants his money, and he wants to go.
Yeah, I think what you say there about him not like filling the super cool spy thing, like meeting on a park bench and like slide a newspaper across the thing. He's not doing any of that because Nedry isn't cool. Nedry isn't smooth. Nedry also is like, to echo your words, self-serving, one-track mind. I just want to get this money. I don't care who I hurt in the process. And again, we're going to get into that because of his actions, cause all the shenanigans to happen. But yeah, he is very like, I am the only person who could look after myself is me. I can't expect Dodgson to look after me. Even with, you got to meet my guy at the East Dock, and he's like, well, you got to make sure he's there. Because I can't, that's on you, man. I'm going to do my bit. My bit is getting these embryos out of here. And he's got this system set up so he has the 20-minute window in order to do so. But you got to do your bit. Can't rely on John Hammond, as we're going to get into, because Hammond doesn't like him that much. He judges him constantly. In fact, not only that, but like, Ray Arnold judges him constantly. So he's in like a kind of a very toxic work environment as well, which is part of his motivation. So we get introduced to Nedry here, and then we meet him again when we actually get to the park, and he's in the control center. I love the set of the control center. It's so cool. There's just something so like, it's so dark. It's one of those, I don't know. I can imagine like a really secure room. And I know the Hammond and Malcolm end up in like the bunkhouse, like in the safe house part, but even that feels super secure, like the control center, like a little shelter. And we see Nedry's desk. He's on his chair, he's lounging, and there are just wires everywhere hanging above him. There are papers strewn all over his desk, multiple computers, candy wrappers, soda cans, crisp packets. I think he's actually drinking a can of pop when we first see him in the control center. We kind of realize, oh, he's like the kind of IT guy, And I'm thinking, like, we're in 1993, like, how these are old computers, like, how understood is IT during this time? And I think, again, we see this kind of generational difference between John Hammond not fully understanding the importance of the IT for this park to work, and then Nedry constantly telling him, like, I'm being underpaid for this job, like the cheapest bid for this work, this is hard work. And John Hammond says, like, well, I'm not going to get into another debate about your financial issues. And again, as the audience, we're like, oh, he's pissed he's not getting paid enough for his hard work. And so I guess from a sympathy point of view, where we sympathize there, I think a lot of us can probably relate to feeling underpaid and underappreciated in our workplace. So there's some good empathy going on there. But then we're also like, oh, but he's going to like screw John Hammond over in order to get his payday. And the film has set up John Hammond to be a likable, if not someone to be suspicious of kind of guy. So, when he first meets John Hammond, I'm talking about now. So when John Hammond first meets Sattler and Grant in the Montana desert, I find it really such an interesting detail, the way he changes his language to better align to their American. So when he says like schedule, and there's another scene where he's talking to Sattler with the ice cream, and he says, oh, merry carousel. And it's just that really interesting code switch to make him more relatable to the Americans when he is. It's interesting because as a Scottish person, Richard Attenborough's accent is what me and my partner like to call posh Scottish,
right?
Which is very, very enunciated, very like clear diction, posh Scottish accent. So it's interesting, like, he makes these changes again to make himself more relatable. But then he won't do the same for Nedry, because Nedry, he doesn't see Nedry as a tool that needs to be used for him like he sees Grant and Sattler. He needs Grant and Sattler to be on his side. Nedry's like, you know what? These are your problems, mate. You've set up everything. Everything works fine. We've got the tour going. I don't need to pay you anymore. As much as the film is setting up Nedry to be the human villain of this film, I really sympathize with him here. I mean, you know, we all want to be paid for our work. We all want to be appreciated. And you've got this old guy, you know, going at you. Like very, you know, and he even says like, thanks, Dad, for his like speech about hold people accountable to their mistakes. Like, this is the workplace, John. Pay your people.
Yeah, but I see, I know what you were saying about how there's a sort of sympathy for Nedry, but I kind of feel that that's more of a modern audience sympathy for Nedry. I kind of feel that, again, back in like the late 80s, and that was all yuppie culture, you know, you had to do whatever you could for your job, you know, above and beyond what was expected of you. And I kind of feel that Hammond's comments were originally meant to be seen as, oh, what? He won't even do his job? Like, what is wrong with this man? So I don't necessarily think it was originally intended to open up any lines of sympathy. I think it was just supposed to highlight that he's terrible at his job, and he's whining, oh no, poor me, I'm working in a park with dinosaurs and I'm not being paid enough money. I kind of feel that was the intention with that, to further perpetuate him as a villain. But you're right, when you watch it now, it's like, well, that's exactly what's happening in the world right now. You only have to look at the movie industry with the writer strikes.
The strike, yes.
You know, that is what is happening. Nedry was just a sort of an early example of the downtrodden employee that goes to extreme lengths because he's not being paid his worth. I mean, that island is a big island. There's a lot of IT infrastructure, and he's the only one. Like, Arnold can work a computer, but Arnold is there for other reasons. I know that there's some other employees that get sent to the boat, but none of them seem to really work in the control room. They're all in the hatchery with Wong. So it's I guess that's kind of what we're doing. You know, maybe Elon's watching it for inspiration, and you know, there's just like one solitary person sat in some control room somewhere programming Twitter and the like.
Yeah, this is like something to base on, like a 30-year-old film's IT infrastructure is absolutely how we base a.
Well, Jurassic Park was running fine with one person, you know, so why can't I?
It was fine until he got greedy, Kat.
Yeah, exactly.
Nedry's appetite could not be satiated. But you're so right. I mean, you're totally right to add that nuance on. This is 30 years ago. This is like, everyone wants to be the boss. You know, we have middle America, you know, you got a single income family, but they can afford like a 4-bedroom house. This is very much that time, right? But now I'm looking back going like, this man is underappreciated his time. Yeah. Like, so yeah, I'm on Team Nedry at the moment. That might change. It's just so sad, I think, in hindsight, and again, appreciate 30 years distance, to see like this actor, Wayne Knight, has his body is being utilized to show all these really negative connotations. And actually saying that, there was a quote from Wayne Knight that I found. So Wayne Knight was cast in the role after Steven Spielberg saw his performance in Basic Instinct in 1992. And then Knight described the shoot as a miserable experience. Quote, I'm sliding down things. I've got mud all over me. I'm soaking wet. I'm 5 billion pounds. I can barely walk. Yeah, I loved it. And he laughs. Interestingly, Wayne Knight said this is the film where he is at his biggest. And that's why he said, like, you know, weigh 5 billion pounds. He could barely look. He found it like physically demanding. And you're right. Like, when we get into it, when we get further into the story, when he's making his escape, he is doing a lot of physical work. You know, he's running up and down waterfalls. He's tying things around trees. I can imagine it being very physically demanding, but not just for him in a bigger body. I think anyone would find that very difficult, you know? And I think it's interesting that he himself self-deprecates, and I appreciate a lot of everyone does this, don't they? You know, we're our own worst critics, but it did make me sad for him that that's how he described himself. He has had a quite well documented weight loss journey over, I think it's more around the 2000s into the 2010s. I'm not sure like if he's been able to maintain that weight loss. Couldn't find a more up-to-date article, but it's interesting like how he belittles himself for being the weight he is in this film, and then the film is also belittling Nedry for his weight. And just from a human to human level, I find that really sad.
Yeah, no, it definitely is never good when you're sort of looking back and describing yourself as weighing like 5 billion pounds.
Yeah, it's just nasty.
Yeah.
But it's self-love, self-care. So again, we kind of go back to Nedry's desk. Let's say it's it's very cluttered. And again, this is like this is the representation of who Nedry is. Nedry is a messy person. Going back to what we're saying, he's not very cool. He's unabashed by social etiquette. He's gonna have all of his like candy wrappers strewn all over the place. What's interesting, on his monitor, he has a woman, a model in a bikini. And this is something we talk a lot about in this podcast, Kat, which is this idea of like fat sexuality. And most recently, I spoke with my guest, Caitlin M. Cairns, on 10 Cloverfield Lane. And in that film, we've got John Goodman, who is our villain, Howard, and he's also a paedophile. And I spoke about how often in I guess it is fat cinema. That's a term I've just coined. In fat cinema, we see that a lot of male characters fall into like the sexual perversion category. And here we get it again. This idea that like on his work computer, he has a woman in a bikini. Like how inappropriate.
Yeah. And in a Spielberg film, it's
a children's film.
Yeah. They felt the need to stick that in to a family film, just again to make him seem completely reprehensible, like they say, in the workplace on his computer for everyone to see. There's children visiting that park, the Hammond's grandkids, they could easily be in there, they could see it.
Well, when Lexi gets onto the computer to set up the visitor center again, it's there. You see it on the monitor. So she absolutely sees it. And, I'm not trying to be a prude or anything, but it's more the connotations it brings. So this idea that this man is like, perverted, he has to have, like it's like he thinks it's appropriate to see this woman in a bikini at his workplace at 8 hours a day or however long he's working there for. And it's like, that's not appropriate. Where again, we've got other fat characters who do the same thing. And I know I bring up these examples every time, but it's because they're really good ones that people like latch onto. But like Kevin from The Office, there's a line in there where they had to throw out his work computer because of all the porn on it. Like this is the same trope, it's just in different genres. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh god, it's there again, god damn it. Like I just want like fat men to be treated like with respect when it comes to sexuality, but apparently that's really hard to find at the moment. Nedry then decides he's going to enact his plan, and we understand that like he's got a guy waiting at the dock who's going to take the embryos in the awesome prop of the shaving cream. Oh, how much did you want that prop? It's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, James Bond, you can have all the gadgets and that you want, but you haven't got like a shaving foam thing that's the kind of thing that, in this day and age, you used to sort of sneak into a festival, your beer without paying, isn't it? It's one of those sort of like early examples of that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? You've got a business idea right there. Jurassic Park themed alcohol sneaker in containers. I would buy one in a heartbeat. Sets this up by saying to Arnold, played by Samuel L. Jackson, and Muldoon and Hammond, I've just got to do like some debugging of some code. So some systems are going to go off and on. It's no problem. He's so nervous saying this. I'm not doing it justice.
Anybody want a soda or something? Because I'm going up to the machine. I thought maybe, I get somebody something. Because I've had all these sweets and I think I'm going to get something salty. I thought maybe somebody would. I finished debugging the phones. I was going to debug, so I did. You told me that, so I debugged the phones, and I thought maybe you should tell you that the system is going to be compiling for 18 to 20 minutes. So some of the minor systems, they might go on and off for a while, but it's nothing to worry about. It's just a simple thing.
He's very anxious. He's sweating, bless him. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just going to go to the vending machine. Does anyone want anything? And again, I find that really interesting because he knows no one will question that, right? Yeah. No one's going to question Nedry going to the vending machine again. And I appreciated that self-awareness from him as using it as a cover. And we see that he's set up this system. I believe it's called the White Rabbit code he's put in, which is going to turn off the security cameras and the secure locks on the area where he's going to get the embryos. Again, an awesome scene of the taking of the embryos, putting it into the shaving. The sound it makes, the oh yeah, it's so satisfying. And then he starts making his way to the dock. And so this is where we see that all of the systems are going down, all of the electrified fences are going down, all the gates are being unlocked. And from a Nedry point of view, very selfishly, very self-serving, it's so he can get to the dock without being detected. He hasn't thought about the impact it would have on the rest of the park. And I'm like, is one hand I'm like, I get it because that makes sense for his character to a degree, but it's such an oversight, Kat.
Yeah. I mean, I have to wonder if he's ever been allowed to see the dinosaurs almost, and it's like they're just not at all in his mind because he hasn't seen them. He's chained to his desk.
He doesn't realize the actual danger.
Yeah, so he's just like, oh yeah, dinosaurs, yeah, whatever, and he's sort of going by some sort of, I don't know, cutesy cartoon image of dinosaurs, but he doesn't realize that they are ferocious. When a lot of them are ferocious carnivores.
Yeah, well, again, it kind of comes back to this idea of there's a nice parallel scene here where earlier in the film, Laura Dern's Ellie Sattler, who, oh my God, I love her so much. Yes. I love Ellie Sattler so much. So, when you were saying how you were a kid running around pretending you were in Jurassic Park. So when I was a kid, I would wear shorts and a tank top and these little boots. And I would pretend I was Ellie Sattler running around, jumping off of trees. The bit where she, at the very, very end, where the skeletons drop on them and she powers. I would do that all the time. Oh God, I just love her so much. Icon. But yeah, when Ellie Sattler mentions to John Hammond, you have plants in your foyer which are poisonous, but you think they look good. That's why they're here. And then you see Dennis Nedry when he meets, and you're going to have to tell me, what's the dinosaur called when he meets? A Dilophosaurus. When he meets him, he doesn't see the inherent danger. He's like, oh, you're like a cute little, chicken, like a grown-up chicken. Yeah. You're cool. And again, it's not appreciating the danger right in front of you. And again, it's the ego of human. We think we're the top of the what am I trying to say? Top of the food chain. That's what I'm trying to say. And he's trying, you're stupid. Here's the stick, go. And again, it doesn't work because this is a dinosaur and you are food, Nedry. You are food. So he crashes, meets our dinosaur, falls, slips, gets muddy. He loses the shaving cream can. And then what's it called again? Dilophosaurus.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Or the spitter. They also, colloquially is known as a spitter.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. In my head, I'm like, this word will not stick in my brain. The spitter, manages to get into the Jeep and eats him, kills Nedry. That, what's really sad is no one in the park even knows he's dead, right? No one, obviously at some point, John Hammond realizes he's not coming back because wherever he's gone is on purpose. And you got Ray Arnold going over there, disgusted by his desk, and he says, what a slob." And again, that is such,
as he's casually smoking in the office, chain smoking in there.
I mean, very, very of the time. But because Ray Arnold is a slender man, and again, Ray Arnold is described as much in the book. So again, let me just find my notes because I do have it somewhere. Yes, described as a thin chain smoker and chronic worrier. So I don't know if this is correct in my thinking, but I do see them as two sides of the same coin. Ray Arnold and Nedry. So, and the fact that the book describes them, one as obese and one as thin, and then the fact that the thin guy has to be the one who takes over the fat guy's role to like try and save the park, and he loses his life in the process too, but at least they kind of know he dies. I mean, in the book, I have to say, Ray Arnold's actually John Arnold's in the book, and he survives in the book. I think that's right. Do you know? Do you remember?
I think, like I say, well, I think it might. I think you might be right. It's been a few years since I've read it. I think
no. Let me just quickly Google it, because I know Gennaro survives the books as well.
Muldoon survives.
No, sorry. So John Arnold does die in the books. He dies in the same way that Ray dies in the.
Yeah, Muldoon survives. This is the copy. It's.
Oh, let me have a look at you. Well worn.
It doesn't have a front cover anymore, but this is the original like paperback of Jurassic Park.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's
yes. Okay, so sorry, Ray/John does die in the book as well as in the film, but yeah, still, my point being, so we've got Ray described as a thin chain smoker. Obviously, chain smoking is not a healthy thing, but you're right, he's passing judgment on Nedry for being the slob. And it's like, you've got a cigarette hanging out your mouth, like, you know, you're not doing much, but you're literally stinking up the room. But again, this comes back to this idea of like fatness and untidiness and like not looking after yourself and not looking after your workspace, you know. And I just think like it just feels like every fat trope is being utilized in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I mean, even down to him being called Nedry, which is obviously an anagram of nerdy, you know, the big stereotype, like especially in children in films, is the fat nerdy one.
Yes.
So he really is just ticking all of them off. Like, I guess it's a family film, so they want to communicate it easily. But yeah, this man is fat and therefore he is gross and disgusting, and we don't want to be like him because he's also a bad man. So you don't want to be like him.
That's a really good point, Kat. Like, he is not meant to be seen as someone who's aspirational. Like, you know, you don't want to be Nedry. You don't want to be greedy like Nedry. You don't want to be, you know, eating more than you should. You don't want to be taking more money than you should like Nedry, because you'll make you know, meet the same fate. You know, his greediness leads directly to his fate, which is being brutally killed by the Spitter.
Blinded first.
Blinded first. Yeah. I did read that apparently either in the book or the original plan for the film, I'm assuming it's probably in the book, he is decapitated. And Wayne Knight was upset that they weren't going to do that in the film because Spielberg wanted to keep it PG-13. So I'm like, yeah, I mean, okay, like, it's brutal. Like, again, the book is not playing around. The book is like, you are going to lose your head
So when the first time, I saw Jurassic Park twice in the cinema, and the first time I went, I did not watch the Dilophosaur scene. I shut my eyes because I'd read the book, and in the book, the Dilophosaur is much bigger in the book.
Oh my god.
And it dismembers him, and then I think you're right, it decapitates him as well. So I was expecting something really intense, and I think there's some sort of like acid in the venom that it spits out, which is what blinds him as well. And being sort of like not sort of around the same time, also somebody that was like big into the Alien franchise, you know, I was terrified of any thought of acid because, you know, I saw what it could do. But yeah, it took me till my second attempt of watching the film to sit and actually open my eyes to the Dilophosaur attack, because I was expecting something a lot more gnarly and grisly than I got, because I know I was reading adult fiction. I didn't realize that there was such a thing, and I was watching like adult films, so I didn't realize that there was such a thing as a rating system as such that would protect me. But it was only I sort of scrutinized that Souvenir magazine and was like, oh no, I don't think it's as bad as a book. And then like I was asking my mum like what happened in it, and then I was brave enough to watch it. So I kind of understand a bit of Knight's disappointment there, because it would have been like a really intense death had they gotten the higher rating.
100%. And I think, like, you know, in film, we want to see consequences to actions, right? We want our villains to get their comeuppance, which you know, I'm absolutely the same. Like, I could get really bloodthirsty when I see like a really nasty character. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait for you to meet your demise. But like, I guess with this, uh, looking at it with the lens of fat representation, even at the beginning of his death scene, when he slips down the waterfall, you get like a sound effect. You get like a whoop, like he slipped on a banana. And I'm just like, is this, well, that's clearly for laughs, right? And it's just this real sinister, like, we're going to enjoy this. We're going to enjoy the fact that, like, he's underestimated these dinosaurs that he's let loose. We're going to enjoy the fact that this dinosaur, who is hundreds of millions of years ago, can outsmart this nerd, right? This fat computer nerd. He doesn't have any survival instincts or like outside skills. No. He's an indoors man. So we're going to watch this all play out. And again, this film has a really interesting relationship when it comes to technology. And so I think, again, we've got like, the computer man, the high-tech futuristic man being defeated by, this 100-million-year-old dinosaur. Where's your computer now, Nedry? Where's your $1.5 million now, Nedry? It doesn't matter, because the dinosaur's just like, your food and I'm going to get you. And yeah, you're meant to enjoy it. And as the scene ends and it kind of pans away from the rocking Jeep and you hear Nedry screams, right? They're quite harrowing, I find. And you see the shaving cream canister being plumped over by all the mud and hidden forever, and the bad guys don't win here, the bad humans don't win here, and we're meant to rejoice. Oh yes, okay, so one of the villains is down, because even though the velociraptors are obviously meant to be our like dinosaur villains, there's also a sense of like, you don't want them to die. No. Either you want them you just want the humans to get away, but leave the velociraptors alone, leave the T-Rex alone. So again, this is really interesting moral like conundrum happening in your head as you're watching it, but that moral conundrum doesn't go towards your evil human character. You just want revenge there, and that's it. It's interesting how we allow more humanity or more care or more empathy towards our dinosaurs than we are allowed towards Nedry.
Yeah, and also the fact that as much as he is this IT man he's obviously done a lot of the infrastructure, but he's still seen by those around him as being stupid. There's that whole thing about even Nedry wouldn't be stupid enough to mess with the raptor pen, would he? It's like even then they're still being belittled as like, oh, even he's not that stupid, is he? So there's obviously been conversations about like how insufferable and dumb they see him as being as well.
But this is the idea of like, they don't appreciate what he has done. And again, going back to your point you raised earlier, but like, has he ever seen these dinosaurs? I just mentioned there, like, he doesn't have like, he's not like clearly not like an outdoors man. So has he even like seen them? Does he understand the inherent threat these creatures pose? Have they told him? Has Muldoon sat him down going like, like, I can imagine, he's meant to be like the gamekeeper from the Kenya Safari Park that Hammond owns. Why has he not sat him down going like, this is not a play zoo. This is not a petting zoo. This is serious. And I need you to understand the ramifications of if any of these systems go down. Like, just tell the man.
I don't think that he is deemed important enough to tell, because Muldoon does have those conversations with Sattler and Grant. He's talking about if they ever got out into the wild, they'd be lethal. He does have those conversations with them, but with Nedry, he's just seen as so low priority. Oh yeah, you just like tap some keys and do whatever, despite the fact that he is literally the only person holding the park together. Literally. So I think that they just never bothered because he wasn't deemed worth saving in a way.
Another little Easter egg, I guess, which I find really interesting, especially because I've just done an episode with a friend of the pod, Harriet Fletcher, is Elvis. So as Ray's trying to work out how to break into this code that Nedry's put into his computer, you get the Nedry head on the Elvis body.
You didn't say the magic word.
Please! God damn it!
It's such a good line. But again, you have a famous person that we unfortunately a lot of us remember to be a fat person. Someone who let themselves go, and I'm using air quotes, the tale of Elvis, especially in the 90s, right? So this is 93. That means that Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's insidious manager, is still alive. And his legacy has been completely tainted by what Tom Parker did to him. And everyone like, oh, he died on the toilet. All these kind of rumors will have been 100% the forefront of people's minds when they thought of Elvis. And again, it's interesting that Nedry uses Elvis here as like someone who dies, a death that is mocked. And Nedry dies a death which the film wants you to kind of like rejoice in and have fun with and have a little silly banana split sound with. I just think it's a really interesting choice.
Yeah, and especially in terms of the treatment of death, because the other big death that you sort of see is Gennaro, who does die on the toilet.
Oh my God, yes.
But he is again, he's a thin man, he's a slender man, and as sort of irritating as his character has been pushed at, there is some level of empathy in his death. Like you're fearful, you don't want to see this man get ripped in half while he's on the toilet. And the aftermath is sad. They find his remains later. I think this was a bit of Gennaro. This too.
Yes.
The little lawyer character gets more of an arc than Nedry does, and a bit more sort of sympathy and remembrance.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess like in that, we know Gennaro to be someone who's very money driven, very, things like we could charge 2,000, 10,000 a day and people will pay it, wants to make this a very exclusive theme park because he knows that's what his investors, and I guess I'm sure he gets a bit of a cut too, being the lawyer. He's also greedy, right? Yeah. He's the blood-sucking lawyer. He's not a likable character. But yet, at least there is some kind of like when Ellie and Muldoon find parts of him that they're appalled. They're like, oh no, like he didn't deserve to die. He's an arsehole. We didn't deserve to like meet a horrendous fate like that. And yeah, you're right. It is meant to be seen as a joke, like he's on the toilet. And again, like his arc being that he's ran away from the kids. Yeah. He ran away because he couldn't defend them. And again, obviously, the most fantastic scene, the T-Rex scene when they're in the Jeeps. Gennaro runs, but interestingly, Grant and Malcolm take a while to actually bring the action. They are frozen with fear. And these are meant to be our heroes. So again, it's this interesting, like, okay, they don't run away, don't get me wrong, but they take a good minute before they decide on what to do. And it's just that comparison between like our male leads. Like, okay, so Gennaro is the coward because he's ran to the toilet. Don't blame him. I'd shit myself too. I do not blame him. But then Grant and Malcolm, they take a beat before they spring into action and get the flares out and start, luring the T-Rex over. But the T-Rex already got his head, or I should say his, that's misgendering, her head in the Jeep already at this point. I just find it kind of interesting. I find it really, really realistic because I don't know what to do if a T-Rex start attacking these kids. I don't blame Gennaro. I don't blame Grant and Malcolm either. But it's just this interesting like idea of like male heroship. Like, you have to stand your ground. You have to defend the kids, when I think a lot of people probably would have done what Gennaro did, which was bolt it, get out of there, get out of Dodge. And obviously he meets his fate because he shouldn't have left them kids. He's punished. No,
but I also like the dynamic with Grant and Ian in the respect of they're constantly in competition. to see who is the alpha male. So even in that scenario, it's not like they're working together and like, right, we need to get these kids out. Like Grant goes in and then Ian's ego is like bruised in some way and is like, well, no, he's not going to be the hero. I'm going to be the hero. I can get a flare and I can do the same thing.
And he almost dies. Like his ego leads to his almost demise because he could, you're right. He couldn't have Grant, who, and I think Alan Grant's such an interesting hero. I ask this question to everyone whenever I talk about Jurassic Park. Do you find Dr. Alan Grant hot?
I was more of a Malcolm girl, I think. Yeah.
But for me, Malcolm's the obvious one because it's Jeff Goldblum and he's in leather in the tropical jungle. I love him.
All in black,
All in black. And the curls are curling, those sunglasses. I'm like, oh my God, baby, get it. But when I was younger, I wouldn't look twice at Dr. Alan Grant. He's a bit of a dad, even though famously he's not a dad. That's the whole point. But he just a little bit dad energy. But now I'm older. I'm like, oh hey, hey, Dr. Alan Grant, how's it going? So yeah, I think when I posted this poll on Twitter, not Twitter, Instagram, maybe 2 years ago, and I literally got 50-50 response.
Wow.
And I find that really interesting. Anyway, but you're right, like Dr. Alan Grant is the quiet one. He's very stoic. He doesn't. It's interesting because he actually doesn't stop Malcolm from flirting with Ellie because he's just it's almost like, I mean, what am I gonna do? I don't want to be like, get away from my woman. He's not that kind of a guy. But then when Malcolm asks him outright, like, oh, is she available? He's like, man, no. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, yeah.
But I mean, if you're dating somebody that looks like Ellie Sattler, Malcolm's not the first guy that's flirted, is he? They've been through that. They've been through that issue in the past.
Honestly, Ellie, Laura Dern, an eternal beauty, a classic beauty. She's stunning in this. Her hair is just beautiful. That feathered cut she's got going on. The outfits, the double denim she wears when they're in Montana with the like beige hat. I love it. I love it so much. So you're right. Maybe Alan Grant is so used to like the diggers in Montana hitting on Ellie. He's like, oh, it's all good. I'm secure enough in our relationship that I know she's fine. She's fine.
Which I think was one of my issues with Dominion, where they sort of brought this love triangle back again and placed Grant and Malcolm as fighting, because Grant did seem a bit more riled up by what's she doing talking to him.
Yes,
I think I know that they've been separated for a while at this point, and the film is sort of like trying to bring their reunion back together. But I still think it's like, well, she didn't go for him back when he was like much younger and hot and like dressed in black leather in the jungle, so why is she going to go for him now? It's
you're so right. And I mean, I've got issues with the Jurassic World franchise. I don't know what you call it, requels, but yeah, I honestly, that film, I don't like it. I don't like it. I will always be happy to see my 3 on the screen, but not like that. Like that. Let's keep. And the thing is, actually, going back tangent, Ian Malcolm is a very different character in The Lost World. And I understand why, right? You've got this conundrum where you go, well, the comic relief now needs to become the leading man, so we're going to have to change his personality entirely. Okay, cool. But I still like it. Like, I still like the film. I think Jeff Goldblum is like just so charismatic. You're just on his side. I love Julianne Moore, like all this good. I'm totally with it. But where like you get to Dominion, where like we're 30 years removed from this film, but these characters are so big in our hearts. Like, I don't want to see them get like, I don't know, thrown under the bus for like shitty storytelling. Anyway, that's my rant.
But it's like it's been 30 years and they're still circling each other. It's like, things with Ellie's been married and had kids in the interim.
I am glad she gets divorced though, because I was like, she has to. That I mean, Jurassic Park 3 broke my heart when like, and the thing is, actually saying that, I know it's realistic, and actually, I appreciate that. Like, she obviously wants kids, he doesn't, so they broke up so she could pursue having kids. Grand, that's actually really realistic, and more people should do that rather than being forced to be parents when they don't want to be. That's actually very good representation. Still broke my damn heart. It's still hurt. So then when obviously her kids must be older, she's divorced, and then they come back together and like, yay, okay, cool. And also like I love to see like older love, like love doesn't stop when you like hit 35, you can find it whenever. But then you bring in like sexy ass Jeff Goldblum, and I'm like, mate, just down. Like leave my babies alone. And also Alan, go get some self-confidence from somewhere, because you had it when you were in your 30s. Why don't you have it when you're in like your 60s or however old you're meant to be? Okay, let me just go back to my notes. Yes. What is positive about Nedry?
I don't know if there is anything particularly positive. I think they do such a big job of beating him down, making him like, the comedy, like the comedy relief, the joke. Yeah, even like down to like his glasses steaming up. When he's
got
like,
to do this.
Yeah, there's other characters in the film that wear glasses. Their glasses aren't seen to like steam up or anything, or they're out about in the humidity. Yeah, I'm not sure that they really do anything. To a modern audience, he is sticking it to the man, which is something that I think a lot of us wish that we could do with our bosses. But I think at the time, I'm not sure there really was anything particularly redeemable about him.
Yeah. I think, again, I'm coming from a place of a modern audience. I'm also coming from a place of like, I want to give some empathy to my fat characters. I think as much as the film doesn't believe so, we as people living in 2023 can appreciate how smart Nedry is.
Yeah.
Right? Like he clearly is super intelligent in order to create a theme park, which is effectively what it is, a theme park IT infrastructure that can be controlled in that control room. And he says with a minimal staff for 3 days. That is not easy to do. And obviously, like, I know this is part of his spiel of why he'd be paying more money, but he's also not wrong. Like, that is not easy. And like you said, like you mentioned earlier, is he the only IT guy? Like, he doesn't seem to have like a team. He doesn't seem to have like a load of different like systems analysts with him. It's just him. And I think like that is not easy. And I appreciate maybe the film didn't think this deeply into it. It was like, oh, it's just IT. No one's going to question it. But as someone, I actually work in IT. Like, I appreciate what Nedry is doing here. So as much as maybe the film doesn't outwardly comment on it, because, they play him to be dumb, stupid, food obsessed, etc., 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 I can appreciate, and I'm sure other modern audiences can appreciate, actually what he does here is pretty impressive. And I will not let Spielberg take that away from him. Like, he is at least a smart person. It's interesting because when things start to go wrong, and John Hammond turns to Dennis and he goes, Dennis, our lives are in your hands and you have butterfingers? Like, what an arsehole comment to say. Like, and again, this is the hypocriticalness of John Hammond, because he's like, he appreciates that Dennis is actually, a single point of failure.
Yeah.
And yet still mocks him, still puts him down, underpays him, treats him like shit, encourages the others to treat him like shit. Like you said, there's probably been conversations with when Dennis isn't around about how stupid Dennis is. Oh, Dennis stuffed to the vending machine again. What a surprise, Like, these arsehole men, this toxic work environment, like, that's not fun. And I just think, like, again, I know we're 30 years later, and I know the intention of the film was not to empathize with Nedry, but it sucks that was the intention. It sucks. And as the only out and out fat person in this cast, that sucks.
Yeah, and especially when you add in that it was a family film, because there were a lot of, I think around that time, films for families, they did have the fat film. Even something like Home Alone with Joe Pesci's character is slightly bigger, and it was very much seemed like an agenda that fat is bad, so kids don't eat all that candy like Nedry does. You don't want to be like him. I mean, thankfully children's films have changed and got more progressive. I mean, obviously you look at, I know you've spoken about it on the podcast before, but like Shrek, embraces the bigger body beautiful. But there was a time, especially around when I was growing up, when every kids film, the villain you could guarantee was going to be like some overweight, probably slobbish, but even if they weren't the big villain, that one of the henchmen would be like slobbish and overweight.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the Disney cartoons do it. So like the villain in like Pocahontas is a bigger guy. The villain in Basil the Great Mouse Detective is a bigger guy. Ursula in The Little Mermaid coming up soon. Just a little cheeky spoiler, cheeky tease. Yeah, like this is so ingrained into us. And it takes a lot of deprogramming to like come at this, like, because this is the thing, right? This is the representation we're seeing, we're given. We talk a lot just in the zeitgeist about how much representation matters, and I don't think people don't appreciate how much it matters when they're not in the body that's being picked on. Empathy, for whatever reason, seems to be really lacking when it comes to cinema reviews and critiques and analysis. Bringing up films where they're made for a certain audience, which is not maybe your default, and people kick off going like, well, why would I watch this? Why wouldn't you watch this? Can you not empathize? Can you not even begin to start to relate to, like, this 13-year-old's plight when she's going through puberty? Like, can you not expand your brain?
Like, I mean, some men just not getting, like, oh, I'm not going to watch that film about you, like Inside Out. No, that is
which one?
The panda one,
Turning Red.
I'm not going to sit and watch a film about like a teenage girl when it's a big metaphor for like her becoming a woman. No, but you watch a cartoon. It's fine for you to watch a cartoon, but you won't watch a cartoon about a girl. It's This is it. This is it.
And I again, like, what's interesting when it comes to like women presented in media, like, again, I appreciate this is getting better, and I'm gonna like just make a massive sweeping statement, so please just apply some nuance, but like where we have the male gaze at the forefront of everything, like male gaze, like it's not me. If it's not made for the male gaze, then I don't want to see it. Women are meant to be inherently sexual. So me and my partner were talking yesterday, I think, as we were watching Jurassic Park, and he was saying, like, it's interesting how like someone like Jack Black isn't derided for like his weight, and like, he's seen as fun and silly and super talented and just incredibly mobile, like the way he does high kicks across the stage, like he's just people love Jack Black, right? They love him, but then they don't apply, like, that isn't extended to any like kind of like fat female person, like, Melissa McCarthy isn't seen as the same kind of level of, I don't know, love. And oh my god, Melissa McCarthy fans, I am sorry if I've just shouted over you, because I want her to be there too. I'm just saying, at the moment she isn't. And I think it's because Jack Black isn't trying to say I'm sexy, even though he absolutely is. School of Rock, 100% sexy, fucking go for it. But he isn't trying to be like, you should be attracted to me.
Yeah.
Whereas women, we expect that they are always meant to be like, you should be attracted to me, you should be attracted to me. So that's why you have like Melissa McCarthy not at the same level, because people are constantly judging whether she's attractive or not. In The Office, Phyllis is the only female character not sexualized by Michael Scott because he can't see her as attractive because she's fat. And it's just, when you have this concept like male gaze versus like, I don't know, is it a female gaze, or is it just like maybe not sexualizing everyone? Like, it's really, really difficult. And I think obviously that Nedry here, he's not meant to be seen as attractive, he's not meant to be seen as sexually someone you're like sexually attracted to, not in the same way that Ellie is where like the sexual attraction comes from. You've got like these two men, being like, oh, she's mine, blah, blah, blah. And that obviously goes into like the later franchise. Obviously Lexi being the only other female in this film is a child, so thankfully like, there's no sexuality going on there. But I just think it's interesting that like media are constantly perpetuating this idea that bigger bodies should not be seen as attractive, especially when it's women.
I agree. But I do like how in Jurassic Park, like, Ellie is sort of the love interest or whatever, but she isn't, like, you transport the character of Ellie into a Michael Bay film she is going to be dressed like Megan Fox in the first Transformers film. She is going to be hot pants and low cut tank top that really, three sizes too small, so it's nice and tight. But she's just wearing khaki shorts and a tank top and boots. It's practical. She has her hair up in a ponytail. She's allowed to wear glasses. But what Malcolm and Grant are both drawn to is, as they say, she's tenacious. They're drawn to her intellect and her ability to convert it. It's like her mind just as much as her physical appearance that they're drawn to. And I like that Spielberg didn't overtly sexualize her. And also just props as well for making Lex a tomboy, as a tomboy watching it. It was like, oh, finally, it's not like some girl in a kid's film that's running around in a dress like, oh, no, my dress is getting dirty. She's got a baseball cap, she's got trousers on.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're totally right. She gets down and dirty. She rightly is terrified. Ariana Richards, who plays Lexi, her scream is one of the best cinematic screams ever. When when Grant gets her out of the Jeep and she stands and she sees tears, that scream is just iconic, and I just feel props and credit to her, because it's just I'm imagining it in my head now and I've just got chills through my body. But you're right, she's getting involved. She wants to defend her brother. So when the Velociraptor comes into the visitor center, they go into the kitchen. She's taunting the Velociraptor. She goes into the oven trying to pull down the thing. She's smart, she's brave, she's strong. You see that mirrored with Ellie Sattler as well. Ellie Sattler is strong, brave, super brave. I am not going in that generator room. Absolutely no way.
But that's the thing, because it's the women that saved Jurassic Park. It's Ellie going over to the power room to switch the switches, and then it's Lex sitting in the control room and booting the system up. Without these two women, those men would be lost.
Kat, you're 100% correct. Yes. Women inherit the earth. Oh, yes. Oh shit! I have my Jurassic Park glass, and I didn't bring it up, and it has "Women Inherit the Earth" on it. Oh, I'll have to put a picture on Instagram so people can see. You see, you were so much more organized because you've got your Funko Pops. I didn't think like that. So the other person I want to talk about, and I appreciate people might be thinking I might be body shaming here, and you know what? I take that criticism on. I think that's a really fair point. But John Hammond. So Richard Attenborough isn't the slimmest person on this set. He is an older man for sure, and also Richard Attenborough was shorter as well. Yeah. So, but there is a little bit of size going on, and I find it really interesting. When I looked at the book, I couldn't see. Sorry, when I didn't look at the book, I just googled it. I don't know how he was described in the book, but again, it's that kind of I felt like maybe his body size could be reference to someone who's richer, eating the finer foods in life, going to the finer restaurants and all that kind of stuff. I thought that might be where, if that was a conscious choice, because again, what I read, Steven Spielberg always wanted Richard Attenborough to play this role, even though Attenborough hadn't acted in 14 years. So he came out of acting retirement to come do this film. And I'm very, very thankful. I think he's great as John Hammond. But yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts. Do you think I might be reaching with that one?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in the book, I can't remember how his character is described, but in the book, his character is a massive bastard. He dies in the book. He gets devoured by, I think it's the compies on a hill in the book. So they definitely switched that character, and they have made him the lovable grandpa. And men reach a certain age, they get that the middle spread, and I think it's that he's got the white hair and the glasses and the beard, and he did go on to play Father Christmas. Yes. He's this jolly Father Christmas sort of character that, as much as he is responsible for this through his own ego and carelessness, and not giving Nedry money to keep him, to pay him his work. I was going to say keep him happy, but it's not that. It's to pay what his worth is. Yeah. he is the sort of this not so secret villain of the piece, but because he is packaged into this lovable grandpa figure, audiences don't see that and they're like, oh, look at Hammond, it's because he's there constantly. He's ignoring so many red flags. John, we need to stop the tour. No, I'll be fine. Or I can't do that. They'll be so disappointed.
Yeah.
But I think he is sort of the jolly fat man, but he's not fat. He's just like you say. He's well lived. He's
I love that. Well lived.
Yeah. He's been eating, the finest foods and that, and he's sort of let himself go a bit because he's a billionaire. He doesn't have to conform to anybody's standards because he can, he just pay them all off. He doesn't need to look a certain way to gain approval because everybody wants his money, so he can do whatever he wants.
That's a really good point. And where Nedry as the opposite, where like he is asking Hammond for that money, Hammond looks down on him, butterfingers, slob of a desk. I know it's Arnold, but still. I don't judge people for their mistakes, but I do ask them to pay for them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, right. It's not like you're light on cash, John.
Yeah.
You got dinosaurs. And again, back to what you were saying about how like he does ignore these red flags when they're at the Velociraptor pen, and you got Muldoon coming in. Muldoon with them short shorts. The shorts, such a good look. I love it. I have said, when I was watching it last night, I do want to go as Muldoon for Halloween one year. I think I'd rock it. I think it looks so good. Anyway, he's explaining the inherent danger of these dinosaurs, and you've got Hammond ignoring, talking to Ellie, distracting Ellie. Dinner's being made. Our gourmet chef Alejandro, Chilean sea bass. Let's not listen to the red flag over here. Let's just go have some really nice food, And I'm like, again, I appreciate Spielberg's point of view, going, we want to make him a more pleasant character, but there are these flicks of ego, as you say, like obviously the ignoring ego, the constant no expense spared, apart from it came to the incredibly important IT infrastructure, didn't, we were very tight there, mate. But then also a scene which always confused me as a child. And I remember asking my dad, the scene where Alan rings Hammond in the bunker, like, Mr. Hammond, the phones are working. And then you hear Ellie going, they're coming through the glass. And he shoots, and you hear it from Hammond's point of view, just hears gunshots. And he goes, don't. I always get confused at this point. Well, not anymore, but as a child, because I didn't understand why he was saying don't. So my reading of it now is he's saying don't shoot the velociraptors because they're incredibly expensive, incredibly expensive dinosaurs, and he loves the dinosaurs. But when I asked my dad when I was super young, going like, why is he saying don't? Because again, I thought like, surely you want to kill the dinosaurs. They're fucking terrifying. And my dad said, oh, he doesn't want the guns going off near his grandchildren. And I think it's a really interesting interpretation of the scene.
I mean, it's definitely a nice way to explain it to a child, isn't it?
I know. Like I'm just like, I appreciate my dad was probably like, oh, guns are dangerous, and you don't want the bullets going near the kitchen. And my dad is 100% correct. You don't want that. Yeah. But in hindsight, I'm like, oh no, it's my dad would be like, oh, they want to brutally murder the velociraptors who don't know what century it is. But yeah, but then that is the fleck of like, what are you talking about, John? Your grandkids are in mortal danger, and Alan and Ellie, who are strangers to these kids, are trying to protect them with their own lives, and you're shouting don't.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's what he's completely unbothered to a point when his grandchildren are missing in the park because, oh, well, they're with Alan, but this man that you've met twice and now has your children. I mean, you've got a white man in his 30s alone in a wood with your grandchildren. That's not necessarily a safe scenario, even without dinosaurs thrown into the mix, but you're quite happy for it to happen.
Yes, exactly. And it's this idea that because he's a paleontologist, he knows exactly what to do. It's like, no, he's studied dead dinosaurs. He's never studied live dinosaurs. I feel Muldoon is a better person to take advice from this because he understands how animals work, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but he gets it. Clever girl. Oh, what a death. Oh,
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Muldoon, and rest in peace, Bob Peck, because he died shortly after. What was my point? Yes. So again, you're right. Like Ellie is so much more terrified for what's going to happen because again, she says in that ice cream scene, like, I didn't appreciate that the power that this place held, and people who we love are out there, fighting for their lives, and he's there eating ice cream. And I know it's melting, and I know he's trying to be, can't waste food.
We can't waste his money, can he?
Well, yeah, he's a tight bastard, isn't he? But what was my point going to be? Let me just look at my notes. Yeah, I think John Hammond is an interesting, complex character in this film. I think more so than the actual film even realizes, I think, just because, especially when you bring in the lens of the book as well. And then obviously like his complete turnaround when he finally rescues them from the visitor center, and Dr. Alan Grant's like, I've decided not to endorse your park, and he goes, so have I. I was like, oh, you were literally just saying to him, don't shoot my velociraptors. Where did this change of heart come from, John?
But then is that, could you read that as he knows that they're going to make it out now, and he's thinking like damage control, they're all going to go to the papers and stuff, and I don't endorse it. I don't endorse it either. Is it that? But then he's got his secret second island that he knows about at this point. He knows that he's got this backup island. So don't endorse this one. Sorry, I've got another one.
Oh my God, Kat. I didn't even think about that. He was hoping he'd die. Oh, he's an absolute asshole. Right, I've taken everything back.
Well, I mean, he might not have necessarily been expecting them to die, but I think for the the media thing of he can like turn around and say no, I don't endorse this either, but because he knows that if they have to like bomb the island or whatever, or go in and kill those dinosaurs, he's like, well, actually I do have this backup island that also has dinosaurs because I'm kind of breeding them there and then bringing them over here. So it's like, okay, it's like that, I think, this tack didn't work for my, for this first business, but I'm going to now set up the second business, which is basically the first business rebranded with a different name. So there's that aspect, but also he's, we haven't mentioned that he's a little bit sexist as well. There's the whole thing about when, I should really be the one going, what, a frail old man should be going instead of a virile young woman. Ellie calls him out. She's like, we can talk about sexism and survival situations when I get back. It's
Queen Ellie. But yeah, it's like, mate, no, you're gonna need to run out there, like, not to be ableist, but like, your capabilities only go so far.
He's got a cane.
He's literally got an amber cane.
Yeah.
Like, mate, you're good. Look after Malcolm. We're all good. Just, again, there's something, I'm so glad obviously this film was going to win best sound editing, best sound mixing, best visual effects. But the Foley of when she's pulling out the walkie-talkies, I love it. It's just like such good ASMR for me. It's just though, I just love it. I love all the props. It's just so cool. There's something so tactile about them. Something we miss. I just watched Avengers Endgame for a upcoming podcast episode, and I mean, just in comparison, this film is 30 years old compared to that film, which is I think 4 or 5 years old now. Just this film, like, there's something so like tactile and like real. It's real, right? It's literally real, and you can tell. And that actually brings me to my next point was, so the morality tale or one of the morality tales of this film is this idea of like respecting technology. And what I find interesting about this film is this film used a balance of the technology available at the time, and they weren't trying to like stretch it beyond its capabilities or underuse it. And it means, and you mentioned this at the very beginning, it's got this really good blend of practical animatronics or autoerotica, as Gennaro says. Yes. such a stupid line. Yeah, animatronic and puppets with the CG, and it holds up today. There are some obvious scenes, when you see the Brachiosaurus at the very beginning. Okay, yeah, you can tell that's maybe not the CG we'd expect today. But everything else, when that T-Rex first attacks, when the T-Rex chases the Jeep, the final duel with the Velociraptors and the T-Rex, they all look so good.
Yeah, there was no question in my mind that those dinosaurs, it was that, I think for everybody that watched it, it was like, how has he got dinosaurs in this film? Like, where did he find the dinosaurs? Because they're so realistic. Like the Velociraptors, they just, still to this day, they look real and so much better than the CGI versions that have come along later in the series. Like,
I 100% agree. And again, like one of the publicity things that they keep wheeling out for the world films was, oh well, there's more animatronics used in this film than any other film. I'm like, you can barely see them, like, in the scene in Dominion when they're in Malta and it's like at the black market and it's just like little dueling like dinosaurs. I mean, they're like in the background, they're not in the foreshot. I'm like, okay, great. I mean, I'm really glad that you are utilizing it, but you're not seeing it on the screen. And I don't like how it's a gimmick. Like, it shouldn't be a gimmick. Like, you should just be using what's the appropriate tech to make this look as real as possible. Yeah,
it's like Alan Grant with his head on a triceratops as it's breathing up and down. That's it's just like, it's like he's there with a real creature. It's
again a phenomenal scene. Sam Neill, his face, like a child, like it's so well done. And you got Ellie crying, like, you can't, again, you put yourself in their shoes. These are people who've been studying this for their entire lives. They obviously love dinosaurs or love, like, prehistoric times. That's why they're there. And the fact that they can actually be with this living, breathing creature who's sick as well, it's just like, there's just such a sadness there. And like, again, when she like gets the torch and she says, oh look, her pupils are dilated, and the vet is like, I'll be damned. It's like, are you even a vet, mate?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, can you not tell that? Why is Ellie?
What's she been eating? This West Indian. Oh no, they're just there for decoration. She doesn't eat those, and it's like, well, are we sure? Because
like,
are something wrong with her? Like,
are you sure? Like, again, why is Ellie the one who has to be the advocate for this dinosaur? Why don't these people who are paid and employed by John Hammond to actually care for these creatures, why don't they care? Even like the way Henry Wu, BD Wong's character, talks about the dinosaurs as if they're just like, I don't know, experiments. Like, we make sure they're all dinosaurs bred in Jurassic Park are female. We just simply deny them whatever is the chemical, to change the chromosomes. And it's just like so like offhand, like really flippant, really, again, really arrogant in the way he tells it. Like, I have to say, like, I like BD Wong, very happy he's been able to come back into this franchise and really develop Henry Wu's character, because his character development makes sense, because he is an obnoxious, arrogant, little so-and-so in this film. As much as we only get to him for like 2 minutes, you get that vibe off him. Well played for getting that vibe across in 2 minutes. But yeah, like, it's just this arrogance that they have over life. And again, going back to John Hammond, the fact that they make him dressed all in white.
Yes.
No, like, he is God on this island. And his disciples, like Henry Wu, like, oh yeah, no, we'll just breed velociraptors. Like, what? Why are you doing that? If you actually do they have a paleontologist on site to like help them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously not, because that's where they bring in Grant, isn't it, to like get his seal of approval. So they've just gone to like a dinosaur encyclopedia and been like, that one. That one looks
cool.
Yeah.
It feels so like everything's image based. Everything is just the illusion of safety, the illusion of security, but it's not real, because as soon as you piss someone off, it falls like a drop of a hat. Going back to the masterful blend of technology that Jurassic Park uses, are there any other films that you can think of which really stand up to the test of time of like how they use the technology available to them at that time?
Terminator 2, which again is, and it's another Stan Winston's practical effects just stand the test of time over and over again. Obviously Terminator 2 was the one that introduced the whole thing with the T1000 melting from, going into like liquid and then back into solid. And
yes.
I remember seeing some making ofs, and to do some of those scenes, they just had cardboard cutouts of Robert Patrick, and they sort of put them next to each other, and then they sped it up in post, so it looks like he is transitioning. It boggles my mind that the thing with like his hands and things turning into the sharp objects, they just feels very real. I watched that film when I was too young, and I spent a long part of my childhood thinking that Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually probably a robot. So like when there was all this thing in the news about him having that heart transplant, I was like, but he's a robot. Like I think that was kind of when I went, oh okay, it's not real. But it's because the effects, they're I think Cameron and Spielberg both use Stan Winston's creations in the right way to pushing that blue, because everything's just CGI these days. And I know there's something, I mean, obviously Avatar, the latest Avatar is James Cameron, and that was a lot of that was heavily computer generated. I feel like his CG still has that tangibility, whereas something like the Avengers films or the DC films, you can tell that it's just like watching a computer game, and that's not what I want from my effects. I want it to be, oh my god, that man's hand just turned into a blade. What?
Yeah.
How is this real? Oh my god, there's a dinosaur over there. How is this possible?
Yeah. That like that awe and wonderment seems to have been lost in recent years, because it's just, we expect it. And actually, I will find the actual article and cite it properly when I post this, but I'm sure I read recently about how the Marvel films, they go out to tender for their CG effects. They say like, we've got 400 effects, and then companies bid on what they would charge for however many effects it is, and obviously then Marvel then go for the lowest bidder, which again is very similar to what happens in Jurassic Park. And you're like, again, I'm a project manager. There's a time, quality, cost triangle. If you want time and quality, or you want it like quick time and high quality, then it's going to cost you. But if you want it cheap, then you're gonna, it's going to take time, and it's going to be lower quality. Like this is fundamentals of how the world works. And yet these bigger companies, these billionaires like John Hammond, think that it doesn't apply to them for whatever reason. And so then you get shoddy CG. A lot of Marvel films, DC films are being criticized recently because you're getting some really bad effects coming through. And then you come back to Jurassic Park, you come back to Terminator 2, and you're like, this is what we could have had 30 years ago. How it's like we're devolving for some reason. And like maybe there's probably many reasons and many think pieces of why that is, but I'm always struck when I come back to Jurassic Park of just how good it looks. There's also obviously kind of going on about like technology in this film. We've got Alan saying he hates computers, he's machine incompatible. We have John not appreciating that the IT is integral to the running of the park. We obviously have the dinosaurs being technology, like basically running around technology. What is the film saying by having this kind of pro and con against technology? You've got people for it, you've got people against it within the film, but what is the film's stance?
I mean, I think it is interesting that I think the only people who really appreciate the technology is Nedry and then Lex. I mean, even Lex is belittled constantly by Tim. She's a computer nerd. I prefer the term hacker.
I'm a hacker.
And they're constantly, because they'd be trying to think where computers were obviously a thing in the 90s, but early 90s we hadn't yet sort of like got the internet or anything yet. So I think our relationship with technology was very different back then, and it's sort of seen as this thing to be wary of. And around the same time we got Terminator 2, which was another film that perpetuated that technology was bad and was
really good point,
was going to be the end of us. So there was definitely something around Like, oh yeah, this technology is great. It can resurrect, extinct creatures. We could bring the dodo back. We could do this. We could do that. But at what cost? Like, we shouldn't be using technology to do this. And I mean, to say it's one of the most successful films of all times and people love it, we have learned nothing from this. We've learned nothing from this film.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because again, going back to what Ian Malcolm says, and I am going to butcher this quote. It's
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
and it's probably the same idea with where we are now with how we treat technology. See, Apple have just announced that big ugly like virtual headset thing, and I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that. That terrifies me, if I'm honest. I don't know anyone who wants that. And I'm like, again, like, okay, it's great, you could, but should you have?
Yeah.
Should you have like spent probably billions of pounds or dollars into this technology where you could have spent it in a much more meaningful way? and I guess like that is what this film is challenging us on. It's like, there is respect. Like ultimately it's respect, right? It's like, utilizing what you can in a respectful way and honoring where it's coming from and the power it holds, and like not delving too deeply into it, because again, it can like, turn around, bite you on the ass, or eat you up, depending on what you've created. The last thing I have here, which is just another very subtle dig at Nedry, is obviously Nedry's intricate, complex computer knowledge makes him vain and prideful, because like, he's like, I deserve more money for this. And I've even defended him there, going, I think he does deserve more money. But then you've got Lexi coming in and resolving it like that. So it's like a
Unix system.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Like, I don't know what that meant back then. I was like, sure, Lexi, go off. I mean, I appreciate she doesn't like debug his code that he's put in, but she's able to restart this entire complex system with a few clicks of a button. And I wonder whether that was an intentional undermining that, like, oh yeah, Nedry's created this really complex IT system, but Lexi, who's meant to be like 12 years old, can come in and work it straight away. And I appreciate, obviously, it's been set up that she is a computer person. She obviously likes computers, but still, like, I wonder if it is meant to be a bit of a underhanded. He's not really that smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, but then I think it's also an early indicator that children are going to take over, especially when it comes to technology. Like Lex is a couple of minutes in, it's a Unix system. Yeah, no, I know this. Oh, I know what I'm doing. And I think it's pointing to like children and our technology are going to have a very different relationship to us. So what Nedry thinks is really complex to her is not so much. It's like, to people of a certain generation, the concept of a mobile phone when it first came out was just like, what? I can do what? And then like, you can take a picture on this, but it's not a camera. It has sort of come to pass. I mean, my 4-year-old she's done things on her tablet during screen time that I'm like, how have you done that? Like, I don't understand what you've like. How have you just changed it into a different language? I don't know. What setting have you gone into? And already, she at 4 years old has got such a different relationship to technology that I had as somebody who grew up for a long time before I had a computer or a mobile phone in my house. It's just fascinating to see how her generation are with technology, this world that has never not known the internet and the interconnectivity of the world that we live in.
It's like our younger generations have literally evolved to not just use it but need technology. Like, they know that they need this, whereas you're right, like, we're of an age where we remember the before time.
Yes.
Before the internet was readily available in our homes. We are the last generation to have that. I believe. Yeah, because Gen Z is like from 2000, isn't it? So, yeah. Interesting. Is there anything else, Kat, that you wanted to bring up in regards to Jurassic Park, fat representation, Nedry?
There is one other character in the film who I guess you could sort of say was maybe, I guess, a little bit, I don't particularly like the word, but a little bit tubby, and that is the obnoxious 6-foot turkey kid from the dig. Again, he's he's like a mini Nedry, played by the kid who played the Dream Child in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Where he was considerably younger. But yeah, he's interrupting this esteemed, prestigious paleontologist who's giving this big speech about, look at the raptor and the way that it does this. It's like a bird and like a bird. And he's like, no, it doesn't look very scary to me. And again, it's perpetuating that stereotype again of the obnoxious fat kid.
And the lack of respect.
Yeah.
Lack of respect to the power that, Alan is explaining to the group. I mean, yeah, first of all, little shit. Like, I mean, I'm like enthralled into what Dr. Alan Grant is telling the group. And he's like interrupting, like, man, it's just like a 6-foot turkey. I'm like, all right, mate. But then, yeah, to your point, Alan comes in with his raptor claw and said how he would scratch across his belly.
Yeah.
While you're still alive. Like, oh, it's so dark. I love it. I'm like, yeah, fucking scared the shit of this kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he makes it a prominent thing, like, like your belly will be the first thing that they will go after because it's like the soft part where all the juicy organs are. And he gets told off, he gets made a fool of. Alan literally makes an example of this 10-year-old child. Whose child is that? What's here?
But it's like Ellie says, isn't it? It's like if you really wanted to scare him, you could have pulled a gun on him.
I know.
Like...
so intense. But again, it's this idea, like, I mean, obviously at this point, Alan doesn't realize he's going to be coming face to face with velociraptors in real life, but he respects the power they wielded back in the day. I'm going to say back in the day, 100 million years ago.
Yeah.
And he's like, you need, even though they're not around today, you need to respect that these animals were incredibly terrifying, and they would have had you on sight. The dual the way that they thought and the way they attacked, the dual attack. So you're looking at this person over at this raptor over here, and someone over here going to come get you around the side, like, explaining these were incredibly intelligent creatures. You can't just belittle them to turkeys, child. That's a really good point, though. Is it interesting? Again, it'd been great. I mean, I'll have to have a real dive into Spielberg's filmography and see how he does like treat bigger characters, because definitely two with Nedry and the kid. He's not painting them in a great light. I'm trying to think just quickly.
I mean, he's a little bit nicer in Hook because one of the Lost Boys is
he bigger? He's
like the cute one. He's sort of like. But again, I think he is driven by food. I think he's the one that it's like starts the food fight. I'm trying to think.
Okay.
What other Spielbergs were around that sort of.
Think about the Lost World. If there's anyone big in that, and I don't think there is.
Not particularly. You could argue that like the tech guy who takes him up in the tree is
the high. Yeah.
He's
Richard Schiff. Yeah.
He's slightly, again, he's got that sort of like middle-aged spread, but nothing more than that. The villains in that are thin men.
They are. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, one of those things where, like, whenever I talk about these things, people go like, right, I'm gonna have like a, when I would watch other films, does this theme track for their other things? Do directors evolve in how they represent people? Because I'm sure they will. I'm sure they do. Like, we are in different times, so it will be interesting to look through like Spielberg's filmography, because I'm sure others will come up. I'm wondering if there are any already on my list. He'll come up again because he's so prolific in what he's done. I wonder if there's anything in Ready Player One, because obviously it's like computers and like. We get the kind of fat computer nerd quite a lot in media, and I'm wondering if there's anything in there. But I can't. I've only seen that film once. Can't remember.
No, there's so much happening in that film.
They're really
full of all of those Easter eggs and stuff that you just get like distracted trying to find, like Chucky and Freddy Krueger and various other people hiding amongst it.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at the cast list. No, everyone is straight sized. Every single person I'm just rolling through is straight sized. Okay, cool. Kat, at the end of our episodes, we like to rate our films based on whether we think, or how well we think, they represent fat bodies and other body diversities, and we rate them out of ourselves. So out of our 5 potential cats, what will you give Jurassic Park?
I mean, this is hard because the film itself I adore, but if we're talking about it in terms of what it's doing for the representation of fat people, it's not really doing anything. So I kind of feel it has to be like 1 cat, maybe 1.5 cats. Some of the dinosaurs are larger.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, they are. Yeah, I agree. I think it's 1 Hannah for me as well. It's a really interesting point of view, this rating system I've concocted, because I'm happy there is a fat person getting an acting job on my screen so I can see them. I just don't like how they're treated. And that's my problem. So I'm like, that 1 Hannah for me is like, they've cast a bigger person. Yay for bigger people getting paid. But then I'm like, oh, it's not in a nice way. And then, you know, he dies a horrible death and we're meant to laugh at it. And I just think, oh, okay, maybe it's not good. We've had a couple zeros on this podcast, but it's because they've had straight sized people and they're telling us that they're meant to be fat. So we're like, well, no, there's an absolute 0. Whereas here, I'm going to extend a 1 for Wayne Knight's casting, but I hate how Nedry is treated, and I hate how his body is meant to represent all of these negative qualities that Nedry's meant to have.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's also that thing of it's a family film. It's a film that me and my friends certainly played, and there's all that like jostling over who's going to be, Sattler and who's going to be Grant and that. And inevitably, if you were the kid at school that was slightly bigger than the other kids at school, you were just going to get cast as Nedry, whether you wanted it to or not. And no kid wanted to be him because of everything we've discussed, all the negative connotations of him, and he's the joke. He's he's one of the ones that gets got by one of the dinosaurs. So just on that, it's sad for children trying to play, because we do that's definitely what I did. We always like reenacted films and TV shows and stuff, and there was like literally no choice. If you were like the more overweight kid, you were going to get told by your peers, well, you're going to be Nedry. You can't be a Malcolm. You're Nedry. It just feeds into that phobia more, because it's then like telling kids, well, no, you can't do that because you don't look like him, so you be him.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be that character in the playground because, like, oh, everyone's going to laugh at me. That's it. It's like, and again, we come back to this time again. There's a massive difference between laughing with and laughing at. Yeah. And fat characters are more often, like far more often than not, being laughed at. Yeah. And I'm just, again, it removes their humanity. It removes who they are. They're just fat characters. They're just fat actors. These poor actors who are literally just being used because they've got these bigger bodies, and they're being physically insulted. And it's like who they are as people. Yeah. For a joke, like for the audience to laugh. And I just think that's really sad. That's super sad to me.
Yeah, I do like how, in a way, Wayne Knight kind of got some redemption on screen by being in Third Rock from the Sun, where he ended up bagging the female character played by Kristen Johnson, who's this big, tall, like Amazonian, gorgeous, blonde model type. And because it's about aliens that come to Earth and they're observing things, and she falls for his police officer Don. And it deals throughout the series, they're dealing with this whole thing of men like coming onto her, but her being like, but I'm with him. Like, oh, why are you with him? But I like the fact that she didn't see what the Earthling saw. She saw Don for a person. So in a way, Wayne Knight got his, he got some redemption by getting to be in an on-screen relationship with this like stone cold fox.
Yeah, no, I do love that. Good for Wayne. Yeah. Good for Wayne. Okay, Kat, thank you so much for joining me on this incredibly deep dive into Jurassic Park and a deep dive into Nedry. I hope we did the character of Nedry justice. I feel we did. The listeners can let us know, of course. And can you please tell the listeners where they can find you and more of your work?
That's a question these days, isn't it? In with everything burning to the ground. Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, I am at Gizmo Shikari, and if Blue Sky or Hive persevere, I am just at Kat Hughes, because I was there early enough to get my own name.
Wow.
And I also do a podcast with my 4-year-old by her request, which is called Movies with Mummy, and we can be found on like Spotify and Apple. It's a micro podcast where we have a very chaotic conversation about whatever film or TV show she picks just before I press record. So it's very cute. It's very, it's very short and lighthearted, but it's something that she enjoys doing.
Oh, I love that. And I love that, like, you're giving her the sense that her opinion matters straight away. You're like, no, you're absolutely allowed to have a voice here. Please share your thoughts on whatever TV show or film she's watched. And that's incredibly important to have especially as a young girl, being told your voice matters. Please say your piece. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So the lovely listeners can find the podcast at Fats on Film on Twitter for however long that lasts, and Instagram, and then they can find myself at Queen Bee Says on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember to stay fat.